Mark Walsh here from the Pragmatic Personal Growth Show. So it's a show now. It's a show like TV. Interesting. So today we're going to be talking about the sensitive industrial complex. Sometimes related to this spiritual industrial complex. My friend Michael Pacelli from the Integral Center in the States, he was talking about it, I think, as the social justice industrial complex. He was the one that kind of gave me a bit of a name for this, though I'd previously talked about the spiritual industrial complex. So, you know, both of us kind of independently had it, but credit to you, Michael, for bringing this forward. So, where to start? You've probably heard of the military-industrial complex. So this idea came around in the 40s and 50s, where people realised this huge American kind of military machine that was kind of self-perpetuating. It started from the kind of ramp up after World War II, and then people realised it was a bit of a monster and it was a bit of a juggernaut and it was costing a huge amount of the economy, but it perpetuated itself continuously in ways. For example, like we see more recently that there's a saying that now wars are started to sell weapons, not the other way around. Yeah, so I think we're all aware of the military-industrial complex and some of the problems that might have. So this has always been the traditional sort of realm of traditional conservatives, more the sort of right side of things in the States. The sensitive industrial complex is another juggernaut that has been produced mostly from the cultural industries and the universities of the United States, and I would say now dominates the world as much as the military industrial complex. So in the same way as the American military kind of invades other countries and dominates them and takes their oil, it's not really... when Bill Hicks said that in the 90s, it was controversial. Now it's just, it's completely normal to say that, right? It's like people get that. That's just what's happening. So what about the sensitive industrial complex? Well, absolutely huge production of industries of university which take huge amounts of money from people and dominate around the world. So let me give you an example of this. The word privilege didn't exist in England 5 years ago. I'd never heard it. And I'm around a fairly broad section of people. You'd have to be maybe some kind of a specialist researcher or something to have heard it. And then a girl from Boulder, Colorado, who I love dearly, actually, Charlie. Hello, Charlie. Who was a specialist in things like microaggressions and trigger warnings and this sort of stuff. A lot of stuff I'm against, actually. But she's a nice person. She came to one of my courses and she said, this is a privilege checklist. And I'd never seen anything like it. And it had different categories, not very many categories. I said, look, I'm not black, but I'm from an Irish immigrant family. Is that in here? She was like, no. I was like, what about class? Is that in it? No. What about my dad was an alcoholic? Is that in it? No. So that was the first thing I noticed. It was a very weird concept because it just had the sort of main American ones, the liberal obsessions, the 7 sacred groups, of Jonathan Haidt would say. And I was astounded by it. I was like, okay, well, it's an idea. Didn't immediately see how horrific it was, but sort of saw holes in it straight away. And that was the first time I'd heard of it. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I started seeing things on Facebook. And now it's mandatory to believe in the concept of privilege as defined by the American liberal left. Yeah, very strange. So something that didn't even exist a few years ago is now not just a word that's offered as a possible concept, but one that you have to believe in. If you don't, you're a bad person. So in the same way as a military-industrial complex tends to dominate with just pure military force, this liberal or this sensitive industrial complex tend to dominate with moral force. It tends to establish what does it mean to be a good person if you're on the left, but sort of for everyone as well, whether we like it or not. Even if, I saw a video today of a black African American saying, you know what, I don't really believe in this. It makes us sound like victims. It's not a good mentality for us, but it's the sort of posh white college professors who are deciding these things. So I think it's a form of domination. Certain language has to be established. And you're an Islamophobe. Whoa, let's look at the language. I'm not phobic. That's about irrational fear. That's psychopathologizing a political belief, a criticism of ideology, which is completely valid. So these words are very pernicious because they force us to think in certain ways, and that way is of the American liberal left. Essentially what I see is the military-industrial complex just crushes people with force, dominates them and threatens them, and this kind of sensitive industrial complex does that with moral force, also by controlling the narratives that we're allowed to think. This is a very leftist idea, so thank you so much for this one, guys. In controlling the narratives that we're only allowed to think in a certain way, because the whole conversation is dictated by this kind of liberal university system, first from the States, and it spreads to the rest of the world. Like, I'm always watching what happens on, Berkeley College campus, because that's going to be happening in the streets of London a few years later. First of all, maybe in, I don't know, a liberal university in London, like SOAS or something like that, University of London, Sussex, where I am, crazy liberal university, and then gradually it will be sort of more and more common until it's adopted by business and the workplace and actually starts to affect me personally. So that's why I'm always keeping an eye on those things. The heart, the epicenters of the sensitive industrial complex, which controls through being offended, it controls through saying these are the new words you have to use, it controls through the narrative, it controls through mocking people. When I said, hey, this is not cool, I've just been banned from this yoga festival for having my political beliefs, true story, recent one, then I was like, hey, that's not cool. And people said, oh, poor white guy, let me play our violins for you, poor hard done by guy. And I was like, hey, what the fuck? Just immediate mocking, insulting. Often it's not really reason and argument that's being used to force this, but just kind of public insulting and mockery and just power. It's Peterson that pointed out that postmodernists believe mostly in power, and this very postmodern kind of center to this industrial complex. So what they do is just try and try and have power over. So trying to get you banned from the festival, in my case, that's a power move. It's not a reasoning move or a discussion move. I tried to do that with the people involved. It went nowhere. It went absolutely nowhere. Like, I mailed the organisers and said, hey, well, what was it that I said that you disagreed with? Let's discuss it. And no response. They wouldn't say. I can guess it's probably something like Islam or radical feminism from the time and the context. So yeah, very interesting, a power over move. And we are seeing that, like the military industrial complex, if necessary, they will resort to violence. So let's take, I don't know, Milo, love him or hate him. Personally, I've got a mixed response to him. Mostly I love him. Speaking at Berkeley and various other college campuses, if they can't ban him, go across the road maybe from the university, people will turn up and be violent. The punch a Nazi kind of thing, that somehow it's okay to be Nazi-like if you think someone's a Nazi. Very strange mentality. So we are seeing this around the world. It does come from America. So my American friends, I'm sorry to demonize you. I certainly don't demonize everyone in the States, but there's no doubt that this domination is really coming from a particular place. As someone that's worked in a kind of spirituality field, you'll also see that as well. The vast majority of speakers at, say, a big yoga festival in Sweden or England or Germany or whatever will either be Asian or from the States. Yeah, there tends to be the big names. And that's sometimes because just Americans are good at marketing and capitalism, and credit to you, people that do that, that put yourself out there and are brave and work hard. But it's also, again, this idea factory and how the ideas end up being the sort of dominant thing. Who speaks about this? Is it Chomsky or someone like that? Manufacturing consent. So there's a very leftist idea, the way ideas control us, but I think the left's already taken that over now. And for its domination of things like Hollywood, spiritual practices, and the general narratives of what is the new things that make you a good person is the words you say that they come up with, and they qualify you in those words and decide what those words are. Fuck that. So yes, resist. In comments, where do you see this at work? Where do you see the sensitive industrial complex? Who do you think makes the money? Is it just something that's evolved and self-perpetuated? Is it something that is actually planned in some way? And if you want more on this, like and subscribe as ever.